bone on the surface. And that really, the light touch that we teach is not really osteopathic. I used to teach that you need to touch just light enough. I teach students to touch the hair on the skin rather than the skin. And, being at Michigan State for those 7.5 years in a research setting, it was like being a kid in a candy store. You just explore all of these things. And the realization that the lighter the touch, the more powerful the effect became clear to me very early on. But it was secondary to the development of the hydraulic model as a basis for craniosacral system. I always thought the rationale was we're dealing with a very delicate system, and that seems enough reason. But the other reason is I want to use a touch that's light enough so that it slips in underneath the threshold of defense of the body. Okay? If you touch a little too heavy, the body tightens in response to it. And you want to be working with the body, not against it. So the touch must be such that it is absolutely non-threatening to the patient.
Or to the subconscious.
Or to the, that's part of the patient. Yeah. So you get into you put your hand on and you blend. And once you blend in with the patient, you're just resting your hand there. The way I teach it, and I presume they still do in the class you're in, is that you have the hand resting on the patient, and then you perceive what your hand's doing with the proprioceptors in your forearm. And I think that's the way to find out what another body's doing. You give your hand to the patient. You can't press and do that. Can't press and do that. Hot out there, honey?
Yeah, I can't see now.
It's interesting because a lot of stuff that we do in the class would look like it's taken from other places. And I'm not suggesting that because of polarity. But I have to say that I was naive about those other things. What's in the class or what we teach has been developed just on the basis of what we've observed. I haven't plagiarized it from other places, even though it may be the same. And I know now that there are a lot of therapies that do light touch. When we started this, as far as we were concerned, this kind of light touch in traditional medicine was unheard of. And so it just came with the idea that I don't want to alert or stimulate a body defense because I'm not interested in diagnosing how well you can defend yourself. I'm interested in seeing what you're like if I wasn't there. Okay? And it's not possible for me not to be there, but I can make myself as unintrusive as possible, or obtrusive, if you will. And ultimately what happens is the patient's being accepts your presence. And once it accepts your presence, which may take just a couple of minutes, once the patient's being accepts your presence, then you are really privileged to become a silent observer, if you will, as to what's going on in that patient. And that's where you find out what's cooking and what you want to do. That doesn't mean all your therapy has to be absolutely that light. But during the discovery phases, you want to be as close to not there as possible. That's my feeling about it. I save, if I'm going to do any heavy work, I always save it for the end of the session. Because if you do something a little heavy, and heavy for me maybe is light for somebody else these days, but if I see that I'm going to have to get a little heavy on something structural, I'll save it because it might take 5 or 10 minutes for their defense to calm down after I do that.
Mm-hmm.
And during that period of time, I lose my connection with their very deep self,
Mm-hmm.
so that, you lose that diagnostic discovery time. And you need as much of that as you can get. It's dynamic, it's always changing. You don't make a diagnosis and that's it. That diagnosis is part of an ongoing process. The process is running from infinity to infinity, if you will, and you just check into it at a time, and you get that little piece of it. The more of that piece you can get linearly, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
the more you become educated about that person.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, when you're working on that level, you're just reflecting back to them what their dysfunctions are,
Mm-hmm.
and then helping facilitate the reestablishment of graceful function.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I'm going to maybe ask 3 more questions. I don't want to take too much of your time. I want to be respectful.
You're being very respectful.
Well, I'll
It's not a problem. Okay.
talk. Sometimes if you've been talking all day, you're going to talk more this afternoon.
No, I'm off today.
Oh, well, in that case, I've got 3 more tapes.
No.
I don't have a sense of... One of the things that impresses me about what you do is that you're bringing this process to a wider spectrum of therapists
Mm-hmm.
who are competent to do this work really well and create an exponential
Mhm.
effect throughout
That's right.
the cosmos, or whatever words you want to use.
Mhm.
And I'm not quite sure of what the politics are. I had been told something about that the osteopathic college wanted to just train dentists and doctors and one other kind of person I can't remember. Oh, osteopaths. And that they were kind of wanted to keep this like a club, and that in a sense you were opening up that club.
Mm-hmm. It's very true.
Can you give me a little perspective on that process?
On the politics of it? Sure,
I don't like the word politics, but of that process.
I know what you mean.
Between 2 points of infinity.
First of all, I feel very justified in doing that because craniosacral therapy is not cranial osteopathy by a long shot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? They're very, very different. Gradually, my understanding is that the Cranial Osteopathy Academy, or Cranial Academy, is beginning to adopt our concepts of a hydraulic system, and that this whole thing is a membrane thing as you've been introduced to it. When I first introduced these ideas based on our scientific observations, it was heresy. And what I was telling them was their concepts that they gathered from Sutherland, who should be credited with the idea that cranial bones do indeed move. Okay? But what I was doing was moving his concepts forward. And they weren't allowed to be moved forward because, they were the keepers of the flame. That's it. Sutherland said it, and it can't be changed, it can't be improved, it can't be enhanced. Okay? And no one should be able to buy a book, no one should know these things except osteopaths first, who take the studies from the Cranial Academy or from the Sutherland Cranial Teaching Foundation, which is the private non-profit sister of the Cranial Academy.
Out of where?
Well, they go different places around the country. They give...
They're not centered in Kirksville, Missouri?
No.
Like that. Okay.
Their mailing address and office is in Idaho. And anyway, they developed an aura of mysticism around this. And I took the first class, and I was talented, and I was sort of invited more after that. And I took a second class from them, and then they invited me to come learn to be a teacher. Is a lot more taxing on me or anybody than if I do that. Now that changes it significantly. I can get to it a lot easier. That's me. That's my own, perhaps my own idiosyncrasy or my own characteristic. But you won't boggle my mind if you come in and we're going to do this and we're going to find out that your liver disease is because you're full of anger because you were pissed off at the spirit who sent you down here and made you do this lifetime. That doesn't bother me at all. I don't know where it can go from here, but I'm perfectly willing to be there and fly with it and see what it is. And I have learned more. So we started doing, I dreamed of having the advanced classes that we have, 5 years ago. About a year and a half ago, we were able to implement the first ones. And that has been such a beautiful exploration because in an advanced class we have 10 people who've had spiritual things. So far. I don't think I've had a student. I can't think of one who has any problem with the idea of spirituality. I don't think so. And I think that, well, there's two factors involved. One is it's self-selecting, obviously. If what happens in SER scares you a little bit, makes you uncomfortable, you're not going to go on to advanced. And you can be a craniosacral therapist and go on fixing membrane systems the rest of your life, and you'll be doing a nice service. Okay? If, on the other hand, what we do in SER intrigues you, you'll move on into advanced. And just the processes that you've been going through in what is called a therapeutic setting will cause you to advance, will cause you to expand. I firmly believe that you can't do this kind of work beyond the nuts and bolts kind of stuff that you're learning right now. And the mouth is another nuts and bolts place. But you can't at all go beyond that without having a broadening experience yourself. And I think that's another one of the services that the therapeutic approach offers. We've had some experiences in that advanced class that just absolutely were beautiful. I remember one. We all saw it at exactly the same time. It was a gal laying on a table. Her body was as clear as could be. And the four people were working, and I looked over and I said, you're all reaching to the same place. You just need to reach a little harder. And everybody did, and they all wound up right down here, deep in her solar plexus. And then we all saw like a white tube with an open door in it. And nobody felt the need to enter. But we all knew that we could if we wanted to. And it really felt like we were in touch with her soul. And she trusted everybody there so much that she opened that up. Well, that's happened 4 times in this past year. And it's always been similar, and it's always been different people. I mean, it isn't always the same group of people. Next class, and maybe one in there that'll happen. That kind of observation of that kind of process begins to make you, how the hell are you going to say, after you see that, how are you going to say, well, it's the temporal bone that's doing it. It's pretty tough. So I don't know, one of the beauties of craniosacral therapy is that it offers that open-ended progression, but it doesn't force you. You can go as far as you're comfortable going as a worker in that field. And I think that's a very important aspect of it. I don't know. I don't know if that answers your question or not. But that's what's exciting to me. And I don't think my mind can get boggled anymore. I really don't think so. Maybe.
Is there some, in the course of, I understand that there was an article written in McLean's and a few other places that maybe I'd like to get some copies of at some point. But is there something in the course of the information that's coming out about craniosacral or the work that's been written about you that you missed or you'd like to talk about? Or I'm kind of giving an open-ended question here to you. that that you would like to get out there?
I think I've covered the things, we've talked about some things that I haven't talked about in other articles. But I think the major thing that I would like to be sure gets out there, and gets out there nice and clean, is that aside from being a therapeutic modality for sick folks or folks with problems, the principles of craniosacral therapy, I think, can be used to diffuse, or can be used to logarithmically spread across the face of the earth and diffuse a good bit of the sense of helplessness and frustration that I would have to feel underlies a lot of the reasons why people buy handguns and blow somebody's head off on Saturday night. And